Thank you so much for having me. Unfortunately, like I mentioned before, most of you joined. I forgot my webcam, so that's why I don't have any picture and it's just audio, fortunately. But my name is Jose Romero, and you can see here I'm the one in the pictures that's actually standing up. That is me, and a lot of what my job looked like before COVID-19 hit and the pandemic hit was me going out into high schools, middle schools, organizations, and talking about what healthy relationships look like and figuring out and letting students know what some of the unhealthy red flags look like in a relationship, because you are all in that age where you might start having feelings for other individuals, and we need to be aware of what a healthy relationship and an unhealthy relationship is, because we know the longer we stay in those unhealthy relationships, the longer that can take a toll on our mental health, our well-being, and it can affect us. We've seen many examples of students who were shining stars within their high schools, and then an unhealthy relationship affected them to the point where they've been missing classes. They don't turn in their classwork. It's let them affect their chances of applying into colleges or even potential scholarships. So we know it is a very important topic to discuss. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And I work for the agency called Hope Store New Beginning Center, and we are accepting of all members of our community. It doesn't matter your background. We're going to help anyone that we can. We're going to educate anyone that will welcome us to their classrooms, to their, doesn't matter where, but as long as we're welcomed, we're going to make sure we share this information with anyone that will have us. And I am part of the education department, and our mission is essentially to promote those healthy relationships again, because we know that when we start having healthy relationships around the community, it helps us all flourish together. But we want members of all ages to understand so they can prevent and respond to those forms of abuse, because hopefully you're not the one that's going through that unhealthy relationship, but maybe we all have friends, we have family members, and some of them might go through some of those unhealthy relationships. So I'm hoping that today you're able to take some information so you can actually help one of your family members or friends that might be going through one of those situations. And that's essentially what our mission is here with our Department of Education. And I was going to touch real briefly, because we know teen dating violence is something that occurs in high schools. And when we do presentations at these high schools, a lot of students usually afterwards, they'll talk with us after, telling us, this is what's going on in my relationship. My boyfriend or my girlfriend doesn't let me talk to any of my friends. Is this a red flag? Is this an unhealthy relationship? And we know that that is because they're trying to control an individual, and that's not part of a healthy relationship. But we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But I just wanted, we know teenagers go through some form of teen dating violence, and we know that it is 1 in 3 teenagers, and it doesn't matter the gender, it doesn't matter the religion. Just 1 in 3 teenagers will be a victim of teen dating violence, which is severely unhealthy for one. But when we discuss teen dating and adult intimate partner violence, we know there's a difference. And when it comes to teenagers, as I usually I hate having to say that your brain hasn't completely developed. The frontal cortex that makes us make those good decisions isn't completely developed, and unfortunately, that's one of the things that separates teen dating violence and adult violence when we talk about it. Because I was a teenager once, and I used to make those decisions where if I was at a party and I would think that I could jump from the roof of the house into the pool. And that's not a very smart decision to have at all. But at that age group, you're not thinking about that. You're not thinking a lot about the consequences. So that's one thing we're going to discuss as well when it comes to the difference between teen relationships and adult relationships, because as I can see, a lot of you are teens, and that's the main focus for today's event or today's presentation. But one of the things we often hear is gender stereotypes. If you're a woman, you're supposed to act a certain way. If you're a man, you're supposed to act a certain way. And I have a clip here that I wanna play for everyone. It's about 2 minutes long. It is in Italian, but it has English subtitles. But as soon as it's done, we're gonna dissect. We're gonna talk a little bit more about that. And through this presentation, if you have any questions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to ask. I love interacting. That's one of the things I miss from actually doing these presentations in person. So again, if you have any questions, don't be shy. By all means, please don't hesitate to ask. But I'm going to go ahead and play this video for us.
Come ti chiami?
Pietro, Fulvio, Domenico,
Quanti anni hai?
11, 9 e mezzo, 7, 8,
Che vuoi fare da grande?
il pompiere, il calciatore, il pasticcere, il poliziotto, il pizzaiolo.
Perché?
Perché voglio costruire la casa dei miei sogni. Perché mi piace inguagliare. Salvo le persone, che non piace la pizza.
E lei è Martina. Che ti piace di lei?
Gli occhi mi piacciono. Le sue scarpe, le sue mani, i suoi occhi, i suoi capelli. Sensibilità solo le capelli. Tutto. Sarebbe bene la bambina. Grazie. Ci fidanzerei.
E ora falle una carezza. Falle una boccaccia. E ora dalle uno schiaffo. Uno schiaffo forte. Uno schiaffo. Dai. No?
No. No. Ce la do. No. No.
No? E perché no?
Perché lei è femmina. Non ce la posso mai dare. Perché le femmine non si picchiano. Perché così si fa male. E perché Gesù non vuole far picchiare. Prima cosa è bellina e non glielo posso dare. Perché è una ragazza. Perché sono contraria alla violenza. Si dice anche le donne non si devono toccare nemmeno con un fiore. E perché è brutto. Oppure con un mazzo di fiori. Perché sono uomo.
Dalle un bacino.
Te la posso dare sulla bocca o sulla guancia?
Now, I'm hoping y'all were able to hear that. Can y'all nod because it wasn't playing the audio on my end? So hopefully y'all were able to hear all that. But the reason I like showing that video to our high school students, middle school students, is because we know when we're growing up, we hear, okay, thank you for letting me know that you could hear it. But when we, even myself, when I was growing up and I was in elementary school, I would hear a lot of what a young boy is supposed to do, how a young boy is supposed to act. And you would also hear how a young girl is supposed to act. And one of the most common things that I would hear often in the playground while we were at recess was if, let's say, I was playing soccer, I was playing some sort of sport, and I didn't score a goal, I didn't catch the ball, the coach would say that I played like a girl. And the message that the coach was trying to do there was essentially trying to insult me by comparing me to a girl. We know that is like completely wrong to do. But on the other hand, we also had young ladies that, like, if you think about when you were back in like elementary school, or you were just a you were much younger and you were in the playground and you had that little boy that would throw little pebbles at you, little rocks at you. What did that usually mean? Didn't that usually mean like, okay, this boy maybe likes you, or this boy cares about you in some way? Because that's usually the message that we would hear from these young ladies. And it would mean, yes, if a young boy's throwing rocks at you, that means they like you. But that's such a weird message to be sending to young girls, because as they grow older and they enter middle school, high school, college, that behavior becomes normalized to the point that it's telling a girl, if a young man is showing you this kind of affection, this kind of physical violence, throwing things at you, then he cares about you. And we know that's not true. But that's the message a lot of young girls are growing up hearing, and it normalizes a lot of that behavior. So we know that's not part of a healthy relationship. We know that healthy relationships, like, I have a whole list of here of, these are all responses when it comes to teenagers and things that they've told me, that they've shared with me. Healthy communication. You should be able to communicate with your partner, with your friends, with family members. That's part of a healthy relationship. Because if you have a partner that doesn't, or a friend, because we know you don't have to be in a relationship with someone to be in an unhealthy or toxic relationship, as a lot of students refer to it nowadays. But if you have to watch what you say around someone, you always have to, where it feels like you're walking on eggshells, or you can't bring up certain topics around certain people, that's a sign of an unhealthy relationship, because you should be able to communicate anything with anyone without having to worry that it's going to anger them or upset them, or how they're going to react. But the same thing, we know trust comes into play as well. That's another sign of a healthy relationship, because if you have that trust, that means we're not going to be snooping on our friends or on our significant others' telephone, checking who texted them, who called them. Because I know how students nowadays, we all, almost all of us, have access to some sort of technology. We love having our cell phones, our laptops, social media, and all that. And we know when there's no trust, even between friends, we've seen that situation where a friend is upset at that a situation is going on between their circle of friends. So now they're upset, and they're going to break their trust by logging into their social media accounts and spreading rumors, or posting something that isn't what this individual would normally post, getting them in trouble, that sort of thing. That's when we start seeing the distrust. And we know trust needs to be a part of a healthy relationship, whether it be through friends or significant others. In problem solving as well, this is extremely important, because if you're able to solve problems, especially in with those relationships, instead of yelling at someone to prove your point, you're gonna talk realistically in a calm, relaxed manner to try and solve a problem in that situation. And we know that applies to relationships. So being able to problem solve and not lose your anger, not lose your cool, is those are all parts of what a healthy relationship look like. But what are some of the other signs that we see that might say, okay, this is an unhealthy relationship with a friend or significant other? It's, you see that in control. Usually when an individual wants power and control over someone else, that's when we see those big red flags that tell you, okay, this isn't the healthiest relationship for me. And we're gonna play a small, short little game here in a bit, but it's mostly to touch on this power and control dynamic that I'm speaking of, but hostility as well, like antagonizing someone, calling someone nicknames that they don't appreciate, even when they've already addressed it, like, hey, I don't appreciate the fact that you're calling me so and so. Can you please stop that? Yet if they continue, that's when we start seeing that hostility, that red flag that starts popping up. Disrespecting someone, physical violence. And this one is unfortunately one of the more common ones that we're seeing nowadays, where individuals don't think that it's unhealthy. But let's say you're in the hallways waiting to go to your next class, and then you have either your friend, your significant other, that pulls you and tells you, okay, let's go, we gotta go, and they're pulling you against your own will, that is considered physical violence, physical abuse. But it is downplayed a lot in schools to the point where students don't think much of it because they see that's how their friends act, that's how they see it happen, so it becomes normalized. But that's another sign of one of those unhealthy relationships. And let's talk a little bit about it's not that common. This is one of the misconceptions, one of the myths that we hear a lot, that unhealthy relationships between teenagers don't happen because they don't know how to have those relationships. And we know that's false. We know teenager students do go through those unhealthy relationships, through those toxic situations where sometimes we don't know how to deal with those situations. So we know it is happening. In fact, like I mentioned earlier, it is 1 in 3 teenagers that are going through some form of abuse, whether it be physical, verbal, and emotional. And that emotional abuse and that verbal abuse are two of the more common ones. And when you speak to any survivor that has gone through some form of abuse, they'll tell you that the emotional abuse is usually the hardest form of abuse to ever get over, because it sticks with someone. When someone's being humiliated, being teased, and just being made fun of, those emotions stay with them years after they've graduated high school, after they've left their significant other, after they've moved on. Yeah, there's still some flashbacks that they get, that's it might set them off, and it might remind them of that emotional abuse that they went through. So it sticks with individuals. And the reason why it's important to discuss this topic is because we know that a lot of the violent behaviors does typically start between the ages of 12 and 18, which falls between your age groups. So we know it is a very common occurrence. Now, let me ask you this one question. Um, just type in the answer to this question. If there was 10 high school girls, and let's say all 10 of them went through some form of abuse, maybe one was physically abused, one was emotionally abused, one was verbally abused. Out of those 10 girls, how many of them do you think would leave their significant other? Like, just type any answer that you would whatever number. 6, okay. 2 or 3. Okay. See, when I first learned about the statistic, I was hoping, oh no, it's gonna be 0. Nobody's gonna stay in that relationship, right? If it was me, if I were in a relationship and somebody um, abused me in whatever form, I would have left already. But the sad truth is that 8 out of 10 of those girls would stay in that relationship, and that's a huge number. And a lot of the reasons, when we have, like, they have their own reasons for wanting to stay. And well, I'll cover a few of these, but yeah, that's a big number. I know. I was shocked with that number too, but they have their own reasons for staying. And you might have that one friend that is in that unhealthy relationship, and you want nothing but the best for them. You want them to get themselves out of that situation. You don't want them to stay in a relationship with someone that might be abusive. So they know their situation better than you do. They might not always share that information, but the number one reason that keeps someone in a relationship that is unhealthy or toxic for them is love. They might care for this individual, that they know that every single day isn't bad for them. They were swept off their feet. Their significant other is very romantic to them on the other days when he isn't abusive. So they've developed feelings for this individual, and that usually keeps someone in a relationship. But the same thing with fear, and blackmailing someone with text messages maybe that they've sent, or pictures, and they use that emotional blackmail to keep someone in a relationship. And they use that threat and manipulation to keep their victims in a relationship. So if you see your friends that are in that relationship and you discuss with them, but they haven't left that relationship, don't be upset with them. Don't get angry at them. Don't tell them, I would have left if I were you already, because that only helps the the person who's being abusive in that situation, in that relationship. But we'll talk a little bit more about what we can do to help someone. Now, I'm gonna skip forward here a little bit because I know I'm gonna run out of time. But we know that unhealthy relationships in general, a lot of the excuses that are used are I was angry. I was upset. I got a bad grade on my test. And that's why I yelled at my significant other. That's why I yelled at my partner. That's why I pulled them. And we know it's not an anger management issue. Anger doesn't cause someone to be abusive. That is just an excuse that somebody uses to hide behind whatever form of abuse that they've managed to put out there. But I want to play this game with y'all, and it's a very simple game. I'm gonna put some little sentences up, and you can tell me, like, just, you don't have to type it out, but just think to yourself, do you think this is cute or do you think it's creepy? Like the picture here on the top left, usually for that one, I would think it's cute. It's just a picture right there. But then on the right side, if you see this one, we are never getting back together because we are never breaking up. That is creepy, and that I would classify that creepy. I've had students that tell me, no, that's true love. She loves her partner, and I'm like, okay. So just think to yourself, once I start playing these next ones, like, do you think it's cute or do you think it's creepy? There's no right or wrong answers whatsoever, okay? So let's say maybe you're not dating anyone right now, okay? This game that we're gonna play, the information that we take is beneficial because maybe down the line you might end up in a relationship where you start seeing some of these things. So we're going to cover that. That's what this relation or game is going to focus on. So let's say your significant other wants to sit next to you at lunch. I personally would think that is cute. Like, they want to spend some time with me at lunch. They want to sit with me. So I would personally think that was cute. Every day. That's when it starts. I see those nods. No, I would think that's creepy too, right? Okay. What about your significant other tells you they love you? I'm like, yeah, I would think so too. It's like, okay, they love me, right? What about if it was the first week of going out? Does that change anything? Oh, now it's creepy. So for some of you, I'm getting replies privately, so they're sending me y'all are sending me messages, and the rest of you can't see it, but yeah, I see how they're changing it. It goes from cute to creepy, right? So personally, yes, I would think that is creepy. Then telling you that they love you the first week. What about they tell you that you need a haircut? I would find this offensive. Like, what do you mean I need a haircut? Okay, but we all like money, right? So let's say they suggest how it's gonna make you look better, and they give you money to go get that haircut too. Does the fact that there's money involved now make it better or worse? Because I personally think it makes it worse. Yeah, and then and trust me, I've heard both sides. Then I hear individuals that are students that'll tell me, no, it's good. They're suggesting, they're giving you advice on how my haircut would look better. So I can see both sides of this. What about they tell you that they love you so much that there's no one on earth who could ever love you more than they do? I've heard this one countless of times by students. Like, my significant other tells me this all the time, but who loves you more than them? There's so many answers there. There's some who loves you more than they do. Yeah, parents. Uh, did someone say my dog? Oh, that's adorable. But yeah, your dog, I'm sure your dog loves you more. My birds, see, our pets, right? Our pets love us more than they do. Yeah, so this one's really important because we need to know that, yes, there's other individuals out there that love us. So, and we know who they are. But when someone starts claiming that they love you more than anyone else, that's when it starts getting creepy to me personally. But then what about wants to hold hands with you? I'm like, I think that's cute. I'm perfectly fine with that, with holding hands. But then all night at a party, or all night at school, or all day at school lunch. I'm like, I was like, no, that's creepy. But let me let me ask y'all: are these things abusive? Are these things unhealthy? Do y'all think they're unhealthy? It's the list we just covered. Y'all think it's unhealthy or abusive in any way? They show signs of bigger problems. Yeah. So that's exactly it. they're not abusive. They are controlling behaviors. They're those red flags. Yes, exactly. They're the definition of unhealthy. But the thing is, I don't want anyone to think that, oh, my friend told me they want to sit with me at lunch every day, and then think to yourself, oh no, I'm being abused. No, that's not what it is, okay? That's not what it is. What it is they are controlling behaviors. And you see a lot of these in with even friends, but significant others. When you start seeing a lot of them, that's when we need to start thinking to ourselves, okay, they're trying to control me. They're trying to get me to do things that they want me to do, like the haircut. What's wrong with my haircut? Why do you want me to style it the way you want? What's wrong with my taste? There should be nothing wrong with that. And again, when you start adding all of this, like, tells you to spend less time with your friends, that's when we start seeing those controlling behaviors. Or you can't talk your friends of the opposite gender because I know what they're going to want from you, so stop talking to all of them. When they start banning you from speaking to certain friends, that's when we start seeing those controlling behaviors. And that's one of the bigger red flags in a relationship, because in a healthy relationship, be there, that power and control over you would not be there. So usually when you get that gut feeling that somebody is trying to control me, it's because they are. Okay, so that's one of the bigger things to keep an eye out for, those controlling behaviors in a relationship. But not just in a relationship. Again, this also happens in friendships with I know a lot, like, we've all heard that term, BFFs. We've heard that BFFs term, but it can get to a point where you have a best friend that is toxic, that isn't healthy for you. So when you think about those things, when we think about those things, don't when we think about those things, just make sure you notice that they can be applied to friendships as well, and not just the relationships with other individuals. And I'm gonna try and cover these real quick just so we can cover more information. So I'm not going to dive too much into these forms of abuse, but we're going to touch on them briefly. Verbal abuse is using words to hurt someone, demean, scare, humiliate them, criticizes, and ultimately control them. It's something that we see common. And when I would walk the hallways getting to the next class where I was going to do a presentation, you would hear students verbally abusing one another and then laughing just because it's been normalized. They hear it so constantly. You see it in Netflix shows, you see it on TV, you hear it in music, you see it on social media. It's just so common that we don't really second guess it anymore just because it's around us constantly. But we also have, on the other spectrum, we have that emotional abuse. And this is when they're trying to use shame, and they're trying to scare you, humiliate you in front of others, to control you, to get you to do what they want in that form. And again, when we talk about, they're all emotional abuse at the end of the day, because it sticks with an individual having to go through that unhealthy relationship. Now, sexual abuse, I'm not going to get too much into, but this is unwanted sexual contact or controlling one's sexual identity as well. Because if you know someone that identifies a certain way, and they are constantly being called the opposite, like if we've seen transitions from male to female or vice versa, and if they're constantly being called the wrong gender that they don't prefer, that's when we start seeing another form of sexual abuse as well. Digital abuse, again, a lot of us are using technology right now. We have cameras, laptops, cell phones, and this is another form that can be used to abuse someone as well. And we see this a lot with friends, again, with the social media. That's something that they'll log in, they'll know their friend's password, and they'll post when they're upset with them, they'll post all these random posts on their profile, which humiliates them and takes that toll on them. But physical abuse, we know what this looks like. Putting your hands on someone or just scratching them, kicking them, this is all classified as physical abuse. But they all take a toll on an individual, on a student, on a parent, on an adult. If they're going through a lot of these unhealthy relationships where a lot of it isn't addressed, it can take a toll on an individual. We've seen a lot of students where they lose sleep because they don't know how to deal with the unhealthy relationships going on in their lives. Some people, when they're being emotionally abused or verbally abused, maybe they're being called fat or ugly, they start developing those sleeping difficulties, nightmares, or eating disorders because they want to fit this image of a skinny model that they saw on Instagram. And again, a lot of social media does play a role on a lot of these unhealthy relationships. So just be very wary that we know, I'm sure you all love social media, but it can take a toll on your mental well-being. So it's nice to always take a break. Don't get on social media if you're upset and so forth. But unhealthy relationships, it's all about power and control. They want to control how you feel, how you think, and they usually use, there's this term called gaslighting, where they use your emotions to make you think like you're the crazy one, which is something that we're seeing a lot of. So again, it's one of those red flags when you know you're right and everything, this friend or the significant other is making you feel like you're the responsible one. That's when we start, the little red flag should start popping up. So let's talk about setting boundaries, because this is important for a healthy relationship. Because if you don't know what your boundaries are, like what you're going to put up with in a relationship or with your friends, they're not going to know what your boundaries are unless you share them. Because personally, for me, when it comes to swearing at someone, I would never do that. I would never swear at someone, and I would never accept someone swearing at me either. So that's one of the boundaries I've set for myself when it comes to my friends and my significant other. I've established it in the relationship that yes, I'm not gonna call you all these names, but you can't call me those names either. That's one of the boundaries I've set for myself. And if they can't meet that your minimum standards of what your boundaries are, then oh well, you can move on. You can find someone else that can, because there are other individuals that can meet those boundaries that you've set for yourself, like respect. That should be one of those boundaries that all of us have. Like, I'm going to make sure everyone is respectful to me. And it can be anything from how they talk to my parents. They can be respectful about my religion or the friends I have. And if they cross that boundary where they disrespect you, that's when you need to know yourself. Okay, what would I do in that situation? Would I forgive them, or is it just one and done? The moment you disrespect me, I'm out of here. And we need to look deep down into like ourselves and see what those boundaries for us are. The reason why that's important is because if you don't have those boundaries set, if you don't know what you stand for in a relationship, or what you want out of a relationship, you're going to let this individual set those standards for you. You're going to let them decide. And I've seen it constantly. I saw it constantly when I was in high school, and I've had students share with me that usually you're able to tell when this is happening, because now your friends or yourself, your interests become all the interests that this individual has, that your partner has. Like all of a sudden you like all the things that they like, and you forget about all the things that made you happy, all the things you cared about. Now you're just concerned with their happiness, their well-being, all their favorite interests. And it starts with little things. I'm not saying that just because you like every single thing that it's unhealthy, but you're forgetting about all the things that are important to you. So that's something to be very wary about. And again, like when I'm talking about your values, your beliefs, I'm talking about simplicity, like things that make you happy. If you want to go to college, what you want to do once you're in college, what your career of choices, things like that, your beliefs. But just having the goal to, hey, I'm going to go to college. And if somebody is interrupting that, they're like, hey, we're in a relationship. I want to move down to New York or up to New York, and you got to go with me. And that gets in the way of your growth, of the choices you had already made. We know that that's taking a toll on your boundaries and your beliefs, and so we need to reassess that. Like, is this person's happiness of moving to New York more important than my growth, than what I want to do, than my career path, than the knowledge I'm going to take in. It's something we need to take into consideration, because the last thing you want is to move up there to New York and be with this individual and then resent the fact that you moved up to New York, that you didn't go to college, that you didn't pursue the degrees you wanted to get. And that's only going to boil up and cause that unhealthy relationship. So that's what we're trying to avoid when we set those beliefs and values for ourselves. Now, I've been talking a lot about those unhealthy relationships that happens to us, but we know that you might not be the one that's in that healthy relationship. It might be that friend that you've known forever, and it's how do we help them? Usually, when we have that gut feeling that something's wrong, it's usually always right. Something is happening. So one of the best things that we can do is ask your friend if they're okay. If your friend, let's say, she used to do her hair all the time or always got her nails done, but is no longer doing that, no longer caring. But I mean, at the same time, it should be one of those little red flags to yourself. Hey, okay, my friend might not be doing well. Let me ask. And it's not just a one and done where, hey, are you okay? And they tell you what you want to hear. They're like, yeah, I'm just upset today for so and so reason. And then you forget about it. No, because we know when individuals are in those unhealthy relationships and they are constantly being abused, or it's just such a toxic relationship, oftentimes they're just going to do the minimum to get by, to make sure the next day isn't as horrible as the one they previously had. So when you as a friend are asking questions, letting them know, checking up on them, you're letting them know that, hey, I'm here for you, I care about you, and when you're well and ready to disclose or share what you're going through, I'm here for you. That's essentially what you're telling them. You're giving them that glimmer of hope. And that's sometimes all a friend needs when they're going through an unhealthy relationship. So they're more likely to come to you for information, to perhaps help them out, or for you to help them talk to the school counselor, that sort of thing. But let them know that abuse is not okay and it's not their fault. The victim, the person going through that unhealthy relationship, is never the one responsible for it. It is the perpetrator, the person that's being abused's fault. But they've lied to them so much that they're starting to believe that it is their fault. And that's one of those early signs too that we start seeing with really unhealthy relationships. It's always it's always your friend that's going, the ones that are going through something. You're always in the wrong. It's never the other individual's fault. That's when we start seeing, okay, this is one of those big major red flags, when they can't take responsibility for their actions or for the mistakes that they've done, and they don't apologize for them. But back to how to help someone, don't blame them. Again, victim blaming is something that'll push them away. It'll keep them from coming out and sharing information with you, because the moment they feel like you're blaming them, you've lost them. They are not going to share any information with you about their unhealthy relationship whatsoever, and that only helps the perpetrator, the abuser. It helps them keep your friend isolated from the resources that they could use. But direct them to resources, and that's where the agency I work for, Hope Store No Beginning Center, comes in. We help individuals that have been in those unhealthy relationships, that have gone through some form of abuse in their relationship, or like I said, it doesn't have to be a relationship, but even in their household. It's one of the other things we see. We have those resources free to them. And I'll have the slide at the end, and I'm going to move forward because some of these are some of the information we covered, since we're close to 5 minutes left. But some of the last red flags that I want you to take from this to keep an eye out for are usually when you're bae. That's one of the words I learned recently with students. Bae is the new word for boyfriend or girlfriend. But when your bae seems too good to be true, like they're always telling you the right things, they know exactly what to say, it's usually because we've seen the perpetrators that'll stalk the profiles of their victims, and they'll look up all their information. They'll look up every single thing that they like on Facebook. All the likes and interest. If you don't turn off the option to share that with everyone, anyone can see everything you like on there. So that's how some of these too good to be true relationships start, because they already know the information of everything you might potentially like. So they're just feeding that information to you. And that's where you think to yourself, oh my God, they know so much about me. Like, they care so much. This is a great relationship. That's one of those small little red flags that should start popping up. The same thing with teasing, criticizing you, embarrassing you in front of others, even when you've told them to stop and they keep doing that. Again, one of those small red flags. Making you feel guilty, emotional blackmail, threatening self-harm as well to keep you in that situation. Those are all red flags. But then possessiveness as well, acting like they own you. One of the examples I use when I see students is I see a lot of them wear necklaces of their significant other. Maybe it'll say something like, the first one I saw was this student in the front of the classroom. He had this necklace that said Jessica. So the assumption I could have made is like, hey, you have a girlfriend and her name is Jessica, right? And he's like, yeah, how did you know? Like, well, you have a necklace of with her name on there. And I asked him, if you were to take that off, or I use myself rather as an example, and I'm like, if I had that necklace, like let's say my girlfriend was Jessica, and if I one day, let's say I forgot that necklace, and Jessica came home and she got upset because I didn't have it. She started yelling at me, Jose, why don't you have your necklace on? You know, I worked so hard to get you that necklace. Now go put it on. That's act of possessiveness. She's trying to act like she owns me. So she's using that necklace essentially as a dog collar to mark that I'm her property. This is essentially what it's coming down to. So when you start seeing that possessiveness, that's one of those signs of an unhealthy relationship. Showing extreme jealousy. Now, I didn't say just jealousy, I meant extreme jealousy, because jealousy is a part of being human. We all go through some form of jealousy, but when we talk about extreme jealousy, that's when we start talking about they are banning you from talking to certain friends, from members of the opposite gender. You can't talk to any of those friends. That's when we start seeing that extreme jealousy. That's when they're trying to control you, and those are those red flags. And then last but not least, explosive rage, screaming at you, that they're verbal abuse. Punching walls, that is considered emotional abuse, because I know they didn't hit you, but they punched the wall, they punch that hole through the wall, and they're trying to intimidate you. They're trying to let you know what they're capable of doing. So that's one of those signs of an unhealthy relationship. And throwing things as well. But since we are running out of time here, I'm just going to skip towards the end with my contact information. We, we I usually have much more time to cover where I can go into detail a lot of things, but I just want to make sure y'all were able to get a little bit of everything when it comes to the healthy relationships, unhealthy relationships, because we know you are on that age where you start having feelings for other individuals. So when you start maybe noticing some of those red flags, always trust your instincts. Okay, trust your gut. You're usually right when it comes to those feelings. Okay, but this is my contact information, my email, telephone number to our hotline, and we're again 24-hour hotline. If you have any questions, any concerns, maybe you have a friend that is going through a situation, you can give them that telephone number and they can reach out to someone, because sometimes they don't want to share that information with you just because they're worried about how you might perceive the information that you take in. So sometimes they just want to ask questions anonymously. They can do that with our hotline. And we have plenty of other services, which you can find the information at our hdnbc.org. And all those services that we provide are all free for anyone that has gone through some form of abuse in an unhealthy relationship, okay? So with that, again, if y'all have any questions, please feel free to ask them. If not, you can, again, email them to me, or you can call our 24-hour hotline, okay? But aside from that, that is our presentation for today, and I just want to thank you all so much for having me today.